I want to talk about Rodney Hood in this video. I want to provide some optimism because people are pretty optimistic about his return from his Achilles injury, but there are definitely some question marks. I also want to talk about his contract situation leading up to him signing this deal that he did this past offseason. I'll touch on the contract situation first. So when we traded for Rodney Hood a couple of seasons ago, there was a weird clause in his contract that basically made it so that if we acquired him via trade, we didn't have any bird rights on him. That led us into last year's offseason where we had to use our taxpayer mid-level exception on Rodney Hood. We re-signed him for about $5.7 million a year, and that was less than he could have taken from other teams. That showed he wanted to be here, and we gave him less money than he otherwise could have made. So he had a second-year player option on that deal. So for that deal he signed, he had a second-year player option for this season worth about $6 million, and after his Achilles injury, I expected him to pick up his player option. I assumed, okay, the player option is in place in case he deals with a significant injury, which he unfortunately did. So I was pretty shocked when he declined his player option because I thought it would be hard for him to make more than the $6 million player option he had going into this season. But apparently, according to him, there was a market out there for his services where he could make around $10 million a year, which is about what he signed for in our situation. Now, if there was and teams were willing to give him that type of money even after this type of injury, that shows that other NBA teams are confident in Rodney Hood bouncing back strong from this injury. And I'll touch on that topic in a sec. My speculation is either there was a market for Rodney Hood's services and he used that in order to get money out of the Portland Trail Blazers, which he gave up last offseason, or last offseason there was a handshake agreement between Neil Olshey and Rodney Hood where Rodney Hood was going to take less money. He could have made about $8 million, $9 million a year elsewhere, but he wanted to come back to Portland, but we could only offer him $5.7 million for 2019-2020. I was thinking maybe there was a handshake agreement between Olshey and Rodney Hood where Olshey agreed that Rodney Hood could recoup that money a year later in this year's offseason where Neil Olshey would give him a good contract no matter what. Now, both of those things might have been the case, but we know that the Blazers take care of their players. They care about their players. They do right by their players. So it wouldn't surprise me if Olshey pitched to Rodney Hood last offseason that if you give up a couple $1 million so that we can retain you with our $5.7 million taxpayer mid-level exception, the next offseason we would be able to offer you around $10 million and we would reward you for giving up money now. That type of agreement ended up being a win-win because Rodney Hood wanted to stay here. Portland could only offer him the taxpayer mid-level exception and needed a way to convince him to give up millions of dollars. And in the end, it all worked out well with Rodney Hood resigning. Now, in this year's offseason, we had what was called Rodney Hood's early bird rights. They're not quite like full bird rights that you normally hear about, but they are basically a limited version of it. And what it essentially meant was we could re-sign Rodney Hood to 175% of his previous contract, which was $5.7 million. And we could do that without having to use our mid-level exception. We basically could re-sign him without using one of the tools that we needed for free agency. That's why we were able to use the mid-level exception on a guy that wasn't on our team last year in Derrick Jones Jr., and we were still able to pay Rodney Hood. So 175% of $5.7 million is approximately $10 million. So this offseason, Portland re-signed Rodney Hood for the most money they could offer him under his early bird rights. We couldn't offer him more than $10 million, but that $10 million is honestly probably a little bit of an overpay given Rodney Hood's injury, but it's the right thing to do to overpay him given the fact that he gave up money last offseason. Now, the injury made this situation a little bit more complex. I was assuming this was going to happen if he stayed healthy, but an Achilles tear, that's a serious injury. However, I think Rodney Hood is well suited to bounce back very strong from this type of injury. Number one, he's a great shooter, a good spot-up shooter. He shot phenomenally well from three last year. It would have been interesting to see how well he shot from three percentage-wise if he never got hurt, if his body allowed him to play a full season, but sadly, we didn't get to see that. I do expect his shooting to remain not quite at that level, but kind of closer to what it was the season before, where he was still a good three-point shooter. But Hood isn't just a spot-up catch-and-shoot three-point guy. He is able to put the ball on the floor and kind of slash a little bit. The thing is, the way he attacks defenses, he doesn't rely on speed and athleticism. He's really good at using his body when driving the lane. He can pull up from the mid-range and knock down shots in defenders' faces. And just because of the way his game is built, it shouldn't decline much from an Achilles injury. If he was a guy that relied heavily on speed and athleticism to get things done, then I'd be far more worried about his productivity returning from this type of injury. But given his playstyle, I think he will bounce back strong, and I think NBA teams agree with me on that, considering Rodney Hood said there was a market out there for his services. So I expect him to return strong. I'm glad the Blazers could get something done, could take care of Rodney Hood after he was willing to give up money to stay here. There's so much talk about how players don't want to play in Portland, yet when we land players, they want to stay here. Carmelo Anthony, Rodney Hood, Damian Lillard. So I think it's only right for our organization to reward the players that actually want to be here and are willing to make sacrifices in order to remain in a Blazer uniform. So even though we had to pay Rodney Hood $10 million next year instead of $6 million if he accepted his player option, I don't care about that. I'm happy about that. I'm happy Rodney Hood got taken care of. I'm happy that he's going to be back from injury, and I expect him to bounce back strong. I'm really excited to see him back out there on the court again. So anyway, let me know what you guys think Rodney Hood will provide this upcoming season. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. And with that, I'm out of here. I'll catch you guys later. As always, peace out. Go Blazers.